We're recording.
All right, thank you. I guess it's 5 o'clock. As the sitting chair, I'm going to call the January 25th, 2023 Sandusky City Planning Commission meeting to order. And I would ask the secretary to call the roll, please.
Jake Castillo, Jim Jackson, Pete McGorry,
Here.
David Miller,
Here.
Steve Pajali,
Here.
Connor Whalen,
Here.
Mike Zuloff.
Here.
Okay. It appears we have a quorum. The first item on the written agenda is the approval of minutes from the November 22nd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. My understanding, I was out of state, but we did not have a December meeting.
Correct.
Has everybody had a chance to review? I was provided with a copy of those November 22nd minutes. Any comments, additions, corrections, revisions?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval as distributed.
Okay, thank you,
Second.
Mr. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Pajali. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of approving those minutes as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passed unanimously, so they have been approved. The next item on the agenda is election of officers for this year, for this board. As the sitting chair, I just would ask if any of the members care to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Pete McGorry be president for life.
It's kind of like the Pope.
Accept another term,
Okay.
if you're willing.
For 1 year, I think.
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to remember, do we vote on one at a time or vote the whole slate?
Your pleasure.
That'd be at your discretion as the chair. We typically elect a chair and a vice chair for this commission.
Okay, no, I know that, but one at a time?
That would be
As a
your,
slate.
that would be up to you.
Okay. So it's been moved, is it second?
Who's our vice chair?
Yeah.
Miller?
Mr. Miller, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that Mr. Miller be nominated for vice chair.
Okay. Do we need seconds on those?
Second on Mr. Miller's nomination, and I'll second Mr. Zuloff's nomination.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further nominations? I guess call the roll on that, those motions then. I guess on the chair's position to begin with, call the roll.
Pete McGorry?
I'm going to abstain. Since
Oh, okay. So did I skip David Miller as well then? Are we doing them
You're
separate?
allowed to vote for yourself.
Separately.
Okay.
Sorry, you can vote on this motion. You
You
can,
can vote
yeah.
for
I can't.
you
All right,
can
I'll
for
vote for
yourself.
myself.
Make it unanimous,
I
come on.
feel ridiculous voting for myself, but I will.
David Miller,
Yes.
Steve Pajali,
Yes.
Connor Whalen,
Yes.
Mike Zuloff.
Yes.
All right, and for vice chair, Mike Zuloff,
Yes.
Connor Whalen,
This for vice chair
Vice
now?
Chair, Mr. Miller?
Yeah.
Right, yes.
Steve Pajali,
Yes.
David Miller,
Abstain.
Pete McGorry.
Yes. It appears that both of those motions have passed. So as the ongoing sitting chair, I'll proceed with this hearing then. It's my understanding that the law director is interested in adding an item to the current agenda. Is that correct?
That's correct. You'll see it on the screen in front of you. I would request that before we get into our regular agenda, we take up a piece of, let's say, time-sensitive business, the reintroduction of a number of our transient rental zoning regulations. And if the chair would like, I have a very brief presentation on that.
I would like to hear that.
Sure.
Please proceed.
So recently, I guess I'll start from from the beginning. What you see in front of you on your screen, and it was circulated to the Planning Commission ahead of time, in 2017, the city passed a comprehensive update to the transient rental regulations that included both zoning provisions, which is what you have before you now, and also a regulatory scheme in our environmental health and safety code. Recently, less than a week ago, the 6th District Court of Appeals, in its infinite wisdom, decided to invalidate this ordinance 17-088 on a procedural technicality. And therefore, in order to have basically continue as we currently and have for the last 5 years regulated transient rental, it is staff's recommendation, and especially my recommendation, that we move forward with reintroducing almost verbatim the transient rental regulations in place in the zoning code. What we are proposing would not be a change to any of our regulatory things. The only change would be to fix something that should have been fixed in 2017, which is to delete from the definition of dwelling the terms non-transient. And the reason for that is because of another court case that held that those two words are vague and need to be removed. This would not change how the city handles transient rental. It would not expand it. It would not contract it. It would just keep the status quo the same. Conversely, we will be bringing to the next city commission meeting the other part of the old 17-088, which is the environmental health and safety code portions. We are splitting them up this time because the zoning provisions need to follow the procedural mechanism that you all follow for your rezonings and changes to the zoning code. The environmental health and safety provisions of that old ordinance do not. And so to speed up the time that we can start permitting transient rentals renewals, which we've received a number of, we are splitting these up into two separate ordinances. The zoning stuff will be before you tonight, and then if recommended, taken to city commission after a hearing in the normal procedures. And then the other part of the old ordinance, which does not impact the zoning code, will be taken up separately and quicker so that we can start processing renewals of transient rental applications so that we don't have any lag time. And the reason that this is kind of time is of the essence is we want to make sure that we don't have any a long lag where there's confusion or anything. We're just trying to return to what we've always done for the last 5 years and give people clarity and make sure that we fix the kind of hiccup that we got from this court case. I'm happy to answer any questions on this, on anything else, if it helps.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
So this was the most recent, affecting what properties or what?
What got the 17 ordinance?
Yeah.
It was the most recent, and it affected, so do you mean like what zoning designations it added?
Right. Did it add any, or was that just the enabling ordinance? I'm trying to get clear on which ordinance, because I don't remember the exact dates. I was here for all of these ordinances. I just don't remember the.
So the 17-088 ordinance, it allowed transient rental in a number of business zoning designations. So it added the term transient occupancy, and you can pull this up electronically. It's all in your emails.
Right.
And it created the accessory use category in 112906 for the transient rental occupancy overlay districts. And what is in front of you is verbatim those provisions, just re-adding those, making sure those provisions remain in our zoning code and are not removed.
Okay.
It also added the definition of transient
I follow
occupancy.
it. I'm just concerned that, you get it on the record here of what.
Sure, yeah.
What we're talking about here. So
The only difference between what is before you and ordinance number 17-088 is, like I said, it does not impact chapter 1341. And the only difference in the zoning code is on the screen right now. In 110701, the highlighted language, the term non-transient would be, we are recommending that be removed. The reason for that is from a 2013 court case, non-transient, if not defined, is, needs to not be in our code because it's
So-
void for vagueness.
We're following this under, while we're at it.
Yeah, what happened in 2017 was that was not removed from the definition of dwelling, but the definition of non-transient was eliminated, which caused the problem in.
Created an undefined term. Okay,
Exactly.
all right, very good.
Correct.
What would be the appropriate motion?
I would ask for a motion to approve the proposed ordinance modifying these, the identified sections of the zoning code.
Thank you.
For follow-up of Mr. Zulaf's point, for public records, do you have that to display? Or is it just in our emails? I did review the emails, but I mean, the idea is.
Do we have-
We want to put this code back on the books. Or can you put it up here, at least for public record, what it is we're putting back on the books?
We can definitely try.
Is that kind of what you meant?
No,
I agree.
I
think that's a good idea.
just wanted I was looking for an explanation here for everyone's benefit.
Mr. Heil.
We do have a draft ordinance, if that's what you're asking, Connor, that we can share.
I have a question, or I guess I just want to state what I'm understanding has taken place and what we're going to do.
Sure.
I think there's going to be a couple of language cleanups, not much substance changes, but it's the existing code, the plan is to reenact it with a couple of cleanup within that. Is that correct?
In the zoning code, the only proposed cleanup is the non-transient. We are also proposing some cleanup for the environmental health and safety code that will go before city commission, specifically on the transfer of permits.
There's a typographical error. You're not.
Right, yeah. I believe you pointed one out earlier.
Okay.
Yes, we will double check for typographical errors that might have been in the original.
And so that there's no misunderstanding, at least to me, and maybe for everybody else, the reason this is necessary is because the appellate court determined that procedures had not been properly followed, and our goal is to redo everything properly following those procedures.
That's correct.
So, just to restate what Mr. Wellen asked, so it's my understanding that this board is being asked to recommend that the existing statute be reenacted with proper procedures, and that recommendation go to the city commission. Is that correct?
That's correct. We would next then follow, there would be a public hearing. Notice would be sent out as required.
At the city commission
At the city
level.
commission level.
Okay.
And then things would be on file for the necessary 30 days. And then city commission would hold that hearing. They would decide after that hearing to whether or not to pass legislation reenacting these things. And we would be back to where we were 5 days ago.
And my last question is really, I think, Mr. Wellen's question, and I have, how do we reference our recommendation to this particular ordinance number? Or is that, do we have that in front of us so we can say this is what we're recommending?
So we won't have an ordinance number for it yet because it'll be determined on how many ordinances come between now and the city commission meeting. But I would say the motion will be for the draft ordinance in front of you, seeking to amend. And if someone wants to, I can give you the preamble. We can read that into the record to make it clear what sections of the zoning code you are recommending amendment.
Why don't you just read that?
I can do that.
and then-
Well,
Go ahead.
Or we can pull it up.
Yeah,
I think Aaron's trying to pull up the draft ordinance right
Yeah.
now.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's helpful for people to understand that the reason this part of the code is going through planning is because in Sandusky, any change to the zoning code must either originate with the planning commission or be referred back to the planning commission. If it either originates with the planning commission or the city commission, and if it originates with the city commission, it's got to come back here anyway. So the most expedient way is for it to originate here. So we just have to get the motion right. And do you really want the preamble right into that?
It's up to you all. I think as long as you
I would,
properly.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make the motion that we refer to the city commission the legislation, that the planning legislation that is in question.
Second. And Mr. Chairman, I've got a question for Mr. Heil. Would the city commission have the option to send this back to the planning commission if they felt they needed to rework the definitions of transient housing and some of the stuff that's currently in the ordinance?
Yes.
So it's not a pass or a no. It's not a yes, no. They can send it back to have it reworked.
No, just like any piece of legislation, city commission at its discretion can vote on it, suggest amendments. It could recommend that the planning commission take up specific amendments after passing this. All of our normal legislative procedures are in effect. The only thing I would recommend is time being of the essence to at least return us to where we were.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I would hope that if there are changes desired, that would be done separately. Part of the problem is that if we pass this, it would take a supermajority of the city commission to override that recommendation, would it not?
Sorry, I timed that very poorly. Yes, in order to override a recommendation of the planning commission, it takes 5 votes on city commission.
Yeah, so this is like, let's get it done, and if we've got something else of another agenda, hopefully we would address that promptly.
So a motion's been made and seconded. I'm not totally clear on the motion, but we're, I guess, in discussion phase, and I still have a question. Is this board being asked to recommend this attached ordinance section, and will that be passed along? Because we're not stating it. I want to make sure it's referenced properly to the city commission, I guess is my point.
Yes.
Well, I would, if I think I used the words to the effect of, and I'll just repeat the words just to the zoning, the planning and zoning section that was invalidated. I said in question, but the zoning question that was invalidated. So I think that.
And if you want to be more clear, I guess we could amend the motion to recommend the passage of the draft ordinance presented to you today that amends the listed sections of the planning and zoning code.
I would move to amend the motion that way. Someone
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded. One last question.
We got to vote on, if you want to discuss the amendment.
Well, discussion then.
Discussing the amendment, because you have to vote on the amendment, then you got to vote on the question.
That's true, but I think we're still in discussion. So if you have a question on the amendment.
Again, my question is, will the city commission, because as I read this draft amendment, there's some things lined out, that they will approve those interlineations and they can clean up any typographical errors and things like that?
We can definitely clean up typographical errors. I guess I don't understand what.
Well, just that taking out the definition of transient rental, which is crossed out of this.
Yes, that is, so it takes out the definition of, in 2017, the definition of non-transient was removed.
Okay.
And the definition of transient occupancy was updated.
Gotcha.
This would reinstitute that change. Because in effect, based on the court decision, we've rolled back the clock to prior to when the original 2017 ordinance was in effect. And so those definitions that are currently in our code have reverted to the previous versions of them, and this ordinance puts them back to the current versions of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
That answers my question. Any further questions, discussions? We ready to vote on the amendment, the amended motion?
Yes.
No, you got to vote on the amendment, then the amendment.
Yeah, we'll take 2 votes.
On the amended, then I'll raise my question, because it's not really about
Okay.
the amendment.
call the roll on the amendment.
Okay. Steve Pajala,
Yes.
Mike Zuloff,
Yes.
Peter McGorry,
Yes.
David Miller,
Yes.
Connor Whalen.
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. Mr. Miller, you had some discussion.
Now
Richard.
discussion, question on the amended motion. And I'm not sure you explicitly said this, but it's an impression I had. I'd like to verify or correct my impression that part of the urgency of this is that there's possibly an annual renewal process for transient rental permits, that we need to get this done before transient rental season or whatever, that people have to annually renew their transient or biannually renew their transient rental permits?
That's correct. The Environmental Health and Safety Code portion of this contemplates an annual renewal and a permitting process for transient rental. We start receiving those in January. We are holding off on processing those until the permitting process portion can go before City Commission, which would be at the next City Commission meeting. And once that permitting process is back in place, we can start processing renewals for anyone who would apply in 2023 for a transient rental in one of the by right zoning areas. This is urgent so that we can return to where transient rental is historically been allowed in the city.
Which to me seems like sufficient justification
Yes.
to move forward and now. That's good.
Okay, so we voted on the amended motion. It's been approved. I don't think we need to do anything on the original motion, right?
A vote on the original.
vote it.
A vote on the amended motion to pass it formally.
I thought we just did that.
You voted to amend the original motion, now you need to
Oh,
vote to pass.
okay.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, so we're going to vote now to vote on the motion as amended.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. To
Uh,
recommend to the
If
city
you could call the
commission
roll on that
for
vote.
reenactment.
Connor Whalen,
Yes.
Mike Zuloff,
Yes.
David Miller,
Yes.
Pete McGorry,
Yes,
Steve Pajala.
Yes.
okay, it's been passed, so.
Thank you. I appreciate the Planning Commission's quick attention to this to help us solve this slight
thank you.
hiccup.
Thank you. I think it was very important.
Site plan.
The next couple of items on the agenda, looks like we have a couple of public hearings. First, Having Fun LLC submitted an application for an amendment to the zoning map for 306 West Water Street. I'm not going to read the parcel numbers. Application is to amend the zoning map from limited manufacturing to downtown business district. The agenda.
Yeah, different. Go ahead.
And I wonder if staff could educate us on that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This site is currently zoned limited manufacturing. The surrounding zoning to the north is downtown business. To the east is downtown business and also limited manufacturing. To the south is limited manufacturing and general business, and to the west is limited manufacturing. The existing use of this site is business. The proposed zoning of this site is downtown business. The site at 306 West Water Street is currently a bar and restaurant use on the first floor. The second floor is currently renovated for residential occupancy, but not in use for residential occupancy. The applicants propose to rezone the property to use the second floor for transient occupancy and to provide a more accurate zoning restriction for the existing business use. The applicant's property is contiguous to a downtown business zoning district to the north and also to the east, which allows transient occupancy, The surrounding uses are mixed between light manufacturing, downtown mixed use, vacant buildings, which are anticipated to become, anticipated to have business in them in the years to come here soon. The Bicentennial Comprehensive Plan outlines a few priorities for this neighborhood, a couple which directly are in line with this application, and that is to support the development and rehabilitation of a variety of housing types, one of which is short-term transient rental, and also zoning changes to encourage hospitality, and that is to determine appropriate zoning for transient rentals. Staff considers downtown business a more appropriate zoning for this site. This site is within an existing downtown area use or future use, and from a zoning perspective, the downtown business zoning is more restrictive than its current use of manufacturing, which on the scale of zoning is towards the least restrictive. This is the second least restrictive zoning class in our code. The zoning is a suitable change and in line with recent expansion of the downtown business district uses, and also in line with the mixed development we anticipate to see as the downtown slowly moves westward. The applicant has been working with the city for over a year to pursue the best solution for this case. Staff encouraged the applicant originally to find neighboring property owners adjacent to this parcel and within the block to also include with this application. That being said, the applicant did reach out to said property owners surrounding his property. None of them came forward to be included with this proposal. There was no objections from other departments. In conclusion, staff recommends the approval of the proposed amendment to the zoning map for 306 West Water Street with the following conditions. And that's that all applicable permits are obtained through the building, engineering, planning, and any other applicable agencies.
Thank you. As this is a public hearing, is there anyone here who wishes to speak on behalf of either the applicant or against the application? I see the applicants here. You want to add anything further?
I think Alan did a great job.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody here wish to speak either in favor or against the application?
One thing I just want to mention from a staff perspective to reiterate with the report that Mr. Oakes gave is when we look at rezoning and formulating a staff recommendation for a rezoning, we don't just look at the use of the property right now or the desired use of the property owner. We look at the future of that area. This block is within our downtown historic district. It's surrounded by vibrant downtown mixed-use development. The site itself is functioning like a downtown business, which all leads to the staff recommendation that downtown business is more appropriate zoning for this parcel.
Okay. I think as chair, I'm capable of making a motion. I'm going to move to approve the application as submitted and subject to staff recommendations.
Second. Mr. Chairman, I see this request similar to that property at the end of Adams Street that we approved, Adams and Meg's. I think you're right on the edge, and it's similar to that, so I'll be voting yes.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mr. Zula.
yeah, I was here for the downtown zoning discussion and formulating the map and everything. And I wish I remembered exactly what was discussed for that block. I don't remember what was, but I can tell you that if I would have had my way, that that area would have been rezoned. So now you see the problems of the, spot zoning or leaving things the way they are short term when it's inevitable that they change long term. But we're getting it done here, so it's fine. There's still manufacturing going on the corner there, so and there's still manufacturing going on down the block, but I think it's inevitable that those uses change, so I'll be in favor of this change.
Thank you, Mr. Zula. Any other comments, discussions? Hearing none or seeing none, I guess we will call the question.
Steve Pajali,
Yes.
Pete McGorry,
Yes.
Connor Whalen,
Yes.
Mike Zuloff,
Yes.
David Miller.
Yes.
been passed. Congratulations. Good luck. I think it's the right thing. Okay, next item on the agenda is also under a public hearing designation, Lionel McCrimmon, if I'm pronouncing that, on behalf of Z Commercial LLC, submitted an application for amendment to the zoning map for 1315 Campbell Street. I won't read the parcel number. The application is to amend the zoning map from R2F residential, two-family residential to residential business district. Perhaps the staff could educate us on this application.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The site is currently zoned R2F two-family residential. The surrounding zoning to the north is also two-family residential. To the east is two-family residential. To the south is two-family residential. And to the west is two-family residential. Existing use of this site is residential. Surrounding uses of this site are residential. Proposed zoning is RRB residential business. The site, if you look at the upper left-hand corner, that's the existing structure. It currently has a two-family dwelling on it. The applicant's proposing to rezone the property from R2F to RRB, so from two-family to residential business. The applicant's property is not contiguous to any transient rental zoning classifications that allow transient rental. It is surrounded by two-family zoning on all sides, and it continues on for a majority of the neighborhood. The surrounding uses are mixed between single, two-family, and multifamily dwellings, and transient rental is currently not permitted in an R2F two-family residential district. The bicentennial for this neighborhood, which is the central neighborhood of Sandusky, states some priorities that are that are related to this case. And that is the key plan of this neighborhood, which is preserving historic housing stock, strengthening neighborhoods, enhancing amenities, and connections to downtown. A second priority of this part of the comprehensive plan is called the top priority, which is to preserve historic and intact housing stock and maintain quality of the neighborhood. In previous cases, staff has been guided by the commission to take rezoning cases of this magnitude lightly. There's still a strong neighborhood feel to this neighborhood that staff would like to preserve, and it continues on for not just this block, but contiguous blocks as well. Staff observed on a site visit that the housing stock of this block of Campbell Street is in fair condition on the exterior and appears to be mostly occupied. Staff determined there is abundance of properties zoned appropriately throughout Sandusky for transient rental. Rezoning a parcel to a less restrictive zoning district in the center of a residential neighborhood does not meet the goals of our comprehensive plan, nor does it meet the trends of the surrounding area. Just a staff note from code compliance, this property was found illegally operating for transient rental on November 9th of 2022. The applicant then contacted the Division of Planning soon after in an attempt to get this application rolling for a rezoning. Other departments had no objections to this request. In conclusion, staff does not recommend commission support the approval of this proposed amendment to the zoning map at 1315 Campbell Street. If in fact the application is approved by the Planning Commission tonight, staff would like to see the following conditions be considered, and that is that all applicable permits are obtained through the building, engineering, and planning departments or any other applicable agency prior to any transient rental.
I'll throw in one more comment just to reiterate on the previous comments I made about the rezoning, that when we look at rezoning, we're not just looking at what the current applicant wants to do, but the future of the neighborhood. And we have heard not just from yourselves, from the Planning Commission, to proceed with caution on transient rental and where it is in the neighborhood, but we've heard a lot from residents to take care to preserve our neighborhoods. And so in this case, because it's clearly a neighborhood with residential, surrounded by residential, it doesn't seem to be in line with any expansion of transient rental in the city, and we recommended against it for that reason.
Thank you. Question, is this a case where property owners within 300 feet would have received a notice of this application?
Correct. So it's a rezoning application, so anyone within 300 feet received a written notice.
Have we received any written responses?
I have not, Mr. Oaks.
To the chair, I have not received any phone calls or emails against this proposal or for this proposal.
So no real responses, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Is the applicant here?
Yes, I'm here.
How do you say your name? McCrimmon? McCrimmon, okay. Would you like to add anything?
Absolutely.
And since it's a public hearing, we're going to need to swear you in. Okay.
It's-
Is there any,
It's not an adjudication hearing, so you don't have to swear them in,
okay,
but they do need to come to the podium and say
okay.
name and address.
So if you would go up and state your name into the mic and address and then say what you have to say.
My name is Lionel McCrimmon, and I live at 5003 Cleveland Road East in Huron. With this property, I recognize the preservation of the neighborhood. I actually am from Florida. I moved here about 5 years ago. So being from Florida, I know how intrusive transient rentals can be. So with that being said, management is key. So, I also have 26 years of working in hotels. Kalahari is the reason that I'm here. And with that being said, I do, because I do have other transit rentals in the Sandusky area, and we work really closely with the neighbors to make sure everything is good and to make sure that we do not create a problem within the transit rentals. So along with that, making sure that the property is well kept, because the management portion of it is really key in making sure that the surrounding neighbors understand what's going on. There'll be different cars coming in. Most of them, with my other rentals, they actually have my phone number, so they're calling me directly if there's any issues. So I realize that this is not zoned, and appreciate you bringing up the fact that this is not just for now, but for future, because that is important. And with that being said, I believe that this particular property could definitely be a benefit in being a transient rental. We would house, like some of my other rentals, house temporary guests or tenants that'll come into town trying to find housing to then relocate somewhere else in Sandusky. So it is beneficial to have a property like this in a residential area, because people actually will come in to see the neighborhood, they like the neighborhood, then they move to the neighborhood. In regards to transient, it really is only transient or would be on Airbnb or a short-term rental for about 4 to 5 months. Outside of that, in the winter months, it would be a long-term temporary. So they will actually come and stay at the property from, let's call it October to April. So really it follows the Cedar Point schedule. And I think, again, that it would be a benefit to the Sandusky area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure who to address this to, but this is a curious property. Because it looks like Henry Street. Let's see. So one of the things that would have to happen here is you have to meet other standards to do, or not, I don't know. If it were in a district, if it was an overlay district, you'd have to meet all kinds of standards, including a parking plan. Would the applicant have to do that here?
At any operation
With the
transit rental,
rezoning?
assuming our transit rental operations code gets reinstated swiftly, they would have to apply for a permit, and that includes a parking plan. And that's in any district that it's permitted. That would be part of the permit.
Right, I mean, this would be a change of use, and if you did, I guess I don't know if I'm asking the right thing here. Because they wouldn't be doing anything if they didn't propose doing anything to the site, you wouldn't need site plan approval. I'm not sure as a neighborhood business whether it would require a parking plan like it would if it was an overlay district, right?
Yes, it would require a parking plan as part of the transit rental permitting process.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
I have a question.
Because,
Oh, I'm sorry.
The property has loads of curb appeal, and it's really a very beautiful house. And its setback, unusual setback for the neighborhood is appealing too, but you could wind up paving that yard. And anyway, okay, thank you.
My question is the house set up right now for single-family occupancy, or is it set up into apartments?
It's apartments.
How many are in?
Two, one on the bottom and one on the top.
Okay. Had it ever been used for long-term rental in those apartments?
The downstairs was used for long-term. The upstairs was renovated and was empty upon purchase.
Okay. I have a question for staff. Now, I know this board and the city have been struggling with how to address applications for transient rental. There's a couple ways to proceed. Change zoning to get it into a zoning code or whatever you would call it, the appropriate zoning that already allows it, or apply for an overlay district. Just so I'm not misunderstanding, if this were not approved as a spot zoning change, theoretically, one could try to pursue an overlay district of the whole neighborhood. Is that correct? Am I wrong in that, or? I'm not saying it would be granted, I'm just saying that's another avenue.
Planning Commission
Mr. Chairman,
or-
that's been a subject of discussion for months, over a year now, that no, the transient rental districts are supposed to originate here, that there is no process for individuals applying.
Or at the city commission.
Right, but there is
Yeah.
no prescribed process for an individual applying for an overlay on their individual property.
There's no formal form application, but an individual or a group of individuals can approach a member on this
Of
board.
course.
That's my point.
Thank you.
And so if this is really what I perceive as a spot zoning issue, and that's a tough nut to crack. And I'm just saying, I'm not saying it will be granted, but there's another avenue to try to pursue this. So I just, if I'm totally wrong in that regard, I want somebody to tell me that. But I think that's another approach. I'm not saying it's going to be any easier than this approach, but.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Now I understand where you're getting at.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Okay.
Particularly the part about it not being any easier.
Right, well, especially right now, we don't even have a transient overlay code district, I guess. But anyway, which we're working on,
Yeah. I would clarify which I think is your question, what we're considering is a rezoning to residential business, which would open this property up to any uses that are permitted in the residential business zoning category. A transient rental overlay district would have to originate from commission, planning commission or city commission. It can't originate from an applicant. And that would only permit the use of transient rental above the underlying zoning.
Maybe the chief planner could give some examples of uses that would be permitted as a neighborhood business property.
Mr. Oaks
So yeah,
would know
I'll
that
go,
faster than I
I'll
would.
touch on that through the chair to Mr. Zuloff. It's light scale business uses with conditional use permit. There's only a handful that are permitted outright. So some of the examples through the conditional use permit process is like the sale of baked goods, the sale of flowers, barber shops, et cetera.
Tattoo parlor?
What was that?
Tattoo parlor?
I don't believe a tattoo parlor is part of that list, but it's a very limited amount of smaller scale business operations that are permitted. Yeah, hair salon and barber shops will be permitted.
If you think of, there's a lot of historic neighborhood commercial in Sandusky where there's a storefront on the bottom floor and a residence upstairs. Some of them have been converted to residential only. A lot of those maintain a residential business zoning for those sort of purposes, small office, barbershop, neighborhood services sort of business.
Any further questions of the applicant? Thank you. I don't think is there anybody else that wishes to comment on this application?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody care to make a motion on this?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to follow staff's recommendation and deny this application as presented. And the reason why is because for months, I've been beating a dead horse that we've got to get our arms around this transient housing and put some regulations in place, and we keep going in circles. I know we have the overlay district that still exists, but I'm not really hot on that either. The first applicant, that area was contiguous to areas that allow it, so I think there's a difference. But until we can get our arms around this transient housing and moving into residential neighborhoods, I'm a no vote.
So that's a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I've been a part of discussions for at least 18 months about how and if it's appropriate to expand the availability of transient rental in areas not currently zoned appropriately for it. And one of the recurrent issues in those discussions are about the relatively limited supply of affordable long-term rental spaces. And I think that that's a concern I know is shared by many. If you go out to look for an apartment these days, finding a place that you can afford in a nice residential neighborhood is very hard to do and not very affordable. So I'm not sure how this house came to be owned by some Michigan corporation, but I think there are willing renters at a good price point that would be willing to rent space like this for a long-term rental in a residential neighborhood, which is what it's currently zoned for and seems completely appropriate.
Thank you. I would comment that a couple of points. I think the applicant individual seems like a responsible person and seems like the kind of applicant that would properly run a transient business. That said, I will also say that there are transient rentals and then there are transient rentals. There's ones that are constant problems, there are ones that are no problems. And I probably am more in favor of transient rental than some people on this board, but I need to say that I don't think a zoning change in this situation is the way to proceed. And so I'm going to also have to vote no on a zoning change. I don't think that's the right, and this is a different zoning change in my mind than the one we just did for downtown, to go from whatever that was, light manufacturing to downtown business, limited manufacturing. That's a different animal than go from residential 1 and 2 family dwellings to transient. But there is this other route, which is a tough route to go to, and we've been working on that. But again, I personally, it has nothing to do with you as an applicant in my mind. I wouldn't be concerned with you as that operator. So it's just, I think this process is the wrong way. It's not the right way to go. So, any other comments?
I too have I'm generally in favor of expanding transient beyond what we have it now. Opening up transient in the middle of a 2-family neighborhood, not so much. I have trouble telling property owners what to do with their property, particularly when they seem responsible and the requests are reasonable. But I am afraid of what we're going to get to if we start approving roadside business in the middle of residential.
Yeah, I wanted to add one other thing too. The fact that neighbors were notified and we've had no responses negative tells me something. Either they don't open their mail or they don't care. one or the other. But again, a zoning change in this is a difficult thing for me. But I wanted to note that we didn't have any negative responses. So that tells me something about you.
Am I able to add one thing?
Yes, sure, go ahead, back up.
Just in response to housing, affordable housing, a lot of these properties, well, the properties that I've seen, they're in pretty bad shape. So I understand the affordable housing, but also adequate housing. I mean, there are a lot of slumlords in the area that these properties are falling apart. My plan is to go in, revitalize them, also put in furniture, so they're furnished properties. So when you do have those individuals that are moving to the area, or even local individuals that are staying here, they have a nicer product now with someone that actually cares when something goes wrong, whether it is a air conditioner, the heat. Also, it's affordable housing because everything is included. So they go into these properties and the internet is included, the lights are included, all utilities. So it is still affordable, and we're open to people staying long-term. So listing it on Airbnb is really only one platform to try to draw business, but it doesn't have to be 100% Airbnb. Like I said, it's only Airbnb 4 to 5 months out of the year. After that, it would be, someone that's coming here to see Sandusky and to get to know the area. So just wanted to give that piece of information to give you shed some light on someone that has managed them.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so while the applicant is up here, just to clarify this, is this a real estate investment company, is Z Commercial, or is that?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's a venture, it's a partnership, and they ventured it.
Are you a principal, or are you, as the agent, are you a principal, or are you a management company in contract with them, or are you a principal in the?
I would be the management company.
You'd be the management company.
Correct, and I'm local.
Right, thank you. So the comment I wanted to make is that this is a growing business model, is we haven't seen it much here. It's a crescendo, rising to crescendo in some communities. It could happen here too, where in some communities there are so many Airbnbs that you really are displacing significant numbers. And people we tend to think of, much of the discussion makes me realize, we tend to think of Airbnbs as mom and pop things. You rent the apartment upstairs, you buy the house next door and fix it up. There are companies that have hundreds of properties and hire folks like this gentleman to manage those properties because they can make more money than the property can make as a rental. And some of those companies are really well run. I mean, they create beautiful properties. They bring people to town, but at the same time, they're displacing local people. So we sort of had, I know that one of our city commissioners happened to run into me and mentioned that we need a moratorium on Airbnbs in Sandusky. Well, we don't have such an official thing right now, but looks like we accidentally found one because we can't pass anything or pass a district at the moment. But if you haven't read about it, some communities are just really having problems with this. So we're going to be tugging back and forth on this issue. This street is heavily trafficked, or heavily traveled. It sort of cries for, little business enterprises. I wish there was another way to do this, to do like a conditional use permit so that you could do only Airbnb and not all the other, but we don't have that. And if you do have that pathway, it opens the floodgates, right? So in this particular case, here's a house with loads of curb appeal. It says, well, if you're going to do anything commercial there, let it be Airbnb and don't do anything else. Well, we can't do that right now. We don't have the tools to do it that way. But the most important point here is that the owner of this property has alternatives, right? So this is a property that can earn a decent return. It's not unfair to the property, to the owner of this property to keep it the way it is and keep it a two-family rental. There's nothing unfair about that. It's not a taking. It's not, the only harm is in missing an opportunity. I don't know if your client also does long-term rentals. I don't know. Maybe you can share that with us.
Yes, actually, in this building or?
No, anywhere.
Anyway,
They have both, so they have both
correct. So
long-term rentals and Airbnb.
yeah, their background is actually apartments. So it's a mixture of
Right.
apartment and hotel.
Right,
which
so
would
the
be-
burden, the buyer may have speculated that, hey, they could get a pop here if they could get it changed. But I don't think you're hurting anybody by saying, we like it as a two-family. Thank you.
Any further discussion we've got a motion on the table, it's been seconded. Hearing none, I guess we'll call the question.
David Miller, David Miller.
No.
Are we voting?
I'll see.
No on the application,
No,
So-
No, yeah, well, the motion was to deny.
Was to,
so in favor of the,
in favor of the motion to deny. Yes, I guess.
yeah.
Connor Whalen.
Is to deny.
Sorry, just to clarify, a yes vote would be to deny the application, a no vote would be to deny the motion denying the
I will
application.
be saying yes to deny.
To Connor.
Yes.
Yes.
Mike Zuloff.
Yes to deny.
Steve Pajali.
yes.
Pete McGorry.
Yes to deny. Okay, application has been denied again on a zoning request issue, so
Understood.
good luck to you going forward.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Yes,
I just wanted to say thanks for being here and spending your career here, and I'm glad you're here. And we certainly don't love to say no, and I know it's hard to hear no, and we don't like to say no to investment. So please don't hesitate to give us a call on yourself and behalf of the folks that you work for to talk about where we can help you invest in the city.
And as you know, we do have districts, and had districts, and will soon again. Am I getting this right?
That would be correct.
We'll soon again have districts where this is permitted, so. Some nice properties and some great opportunities. Thank you.
and I will add, enjoy the snow while you're here, while it's here, since you're from Florida.
He lives here now.
All right,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I just can't resist a little interjection.
Sorry, I started it.
My daughter grew up here. When she graduated from college, moved to California, hasn't really looked back, seldom visits. But apparently among her friends, there's a community, maybe the phrase is digital nomads, these young tech stars that find they can work from virtually anywhere in the world, and so they choose to do that. Among her friends, they think that Sandusky is really ripe for a takeover. It's got interesting stuff, a modest cost of living, and they can't hardly believe that this opportunity is out here. This is the kind of place that they want to come, but they don't want to move here forever. They just
Yeah, try
want
it
to come
out.
here for
Yeah.
a few months, or,
Yeah,
like live a month in Denver and live a
Yeah.
month in Albuquerque, and others that live 6 months in Thailand and 6 months in Cambodia, and, I mean.
which
these are
goes right
people
up
I
the
know.
alley to a furnished apartment for a few months, and,
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
So all you have to do is pass that 30 days.
All right. All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. So moving on, new business. We've got a site plan application. I think there's a Ms. Bank here, is that correct? And is there an Ari Swirsky too? Okay, thank you. Well, first I would ask staff to educate us on the site plan application.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This site is zoned public facilities. The surrounding zoning to the north is public facilities. To the east is both public facilities and general business. To the south is Perkins Township. It's zoned I-1 light industrial. To the west is both public facilities and also general business. The surrounding uses are park, business, and then also school facilities. The existing use of this site is campus for Sandusky City Schools, and the proposed use is for Sandusky City Schools. They're proposing to add an auditorium attached to the current high school. The scope consists of renovating the existing pool locker rooms, converting the existing pool into an athletics multi-purpose room, family locker rooms, and constructing the new auditorium. The proposed plan will have a new seating capacity of 285 bleacher seats. The facility will be used by both students and the community. The hours of use are still to be determined. The proposed auditorium will be 12,200 square feet and will be placed on the east side of the existing high school building on top of an existing parking lot. If you look at the bottom right corner of the screen, that's a general area of where it will be placed. This campus is approximately 13 acres. The total land coverage with this proposal included is 29.2%. Sandusky High School currently has 322 parking spaces, plus an agreement with a local or an adjacent business for 30 extra spaces after hours and 113 intermediate school spaces to the north. This proposal will remove approximately 56 parking spaces. The proposed height of this natatorium is going to be 26 feet. The architect and the applicants are confident, after staff had talked with them, that the proposed approximate 56 parking spaces that are going to be removed would not negatively impact the parking demand for the proposed facility or for school operations. Per the zoning code, no additional parking is required. Because public facilities, it's up to the architect in a sense. The exact language here, if you don't mind me looking, public facilities and municipal education, number of spaces to be determined based on site development. So in this case, the architect is confident that the removal of the parking spaces won't negatively impact that. So in this case, no additional landscaping is required. All area standards are satisfied. All yard regulations are satisfied. This is a permitted use for the zoning district. There was no objections from either the engineering building staff, police department, or fire department. And staff recommends the approval of the site plan at 2130 Hayes Ave with the following conditions, and that's that all applicable permits are obtained through the building, engineering, and planning departments or any other applicable agency prior to construction.
Thank you. Ms. Bank, do you want to add anything at this point?
I think you covered it all.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
motion to approve the application.
Thank you, Mr. Zuloff.
Second.
Mr. Pajali, second. Any discussion on the motion?
Just a,
I thought I saw your lips start to move.
I'm prepared to vote in favor. This is just a point of curiosity. Where are we with funding this thing? It's been a long time in the making, and I don't think that anybody really objects to the site plan. It's been something that's been kicked around for 5 or more years. It just seems like the goalpost gets moved and moved and moved down with the funding, so I'd like to see it actually materialize. I just wondered if there was any comment about where we are in funding this venture.
I can answer that. Come up here, Sarah.
Mr. Fike, I know who you are, and we all know, but maybe state your name
Yep.
for the record.
I'm John Fike. I'm the owner's representative on this project. Where we stand right now is funding has been completed. The school board has approved then design to start construction documents and get them completed. We hope to go out for bid in April. Construction starting hopefully in June, and then it's an 18-month project to finish the project.
If Mr. Miller wanted to contribute, he wouldn't be refused at this point.
I can say right here if you want to break out your wallet.
The pledge was made long ago, and nobody has come knocking, asking for the check that we pledged.
They will be once we get to the point where construction documents are completed.
Okay. Any further questions?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if Mr. Fike is the one I should ask this. I get out on the street if I'm having coffee or something, questions about, is this the original plan, or is this the original layout for this pool, or has it been downsized, or what is the final product going to be?
The original plan way back, like 3 years ago, was to renovate the existing pool and add a pool. Doing all the fundraising and then looking at all the space that was available, the footprint of what was going to go on there was much bigger than this. And the bigger the footprint, the more it costs. So it was, with money available, we cut it back to one large pool. We're going to eliminate the existing pool, keeping the locker rooms, and we're ending up with a pool, 8 lanes, which is exactly what we need for both the Sandusky City Schools competitive swimming, for their Swan Club, and for our teaching of our kids. And then in the off hours, being able to open it up for the public's use. The other thing that we gained this that we did not have before, we're adding a multi-purpose room in the old pool area for our what we call our biddy wrestlers and our cheerleading programs. So that right now is down at Jackson Junior High. It's going to move out to the high school.
Thank you, Mr. Fike. Now I can answer those questions, but I have one more question. In that multi-purpose room, will they fill that existing pool?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
I have one question for John, since you're up there. You said something about public use. Is there considerations then for separating it from the rest of the building and parking for public to be able to use it even during school hours? I think that's probably an important thing.
The entire building is separate from the high school where the pool is. It'll have locker rooms that are separate to be for the public's use. There's a separate entrance just for the pool.
Yeah, good.
And so if I want to go out there with my grandkids, I can come in the front door. I cannot get into the high school.
Good.
I will only be able to get into the pool area.
Good.
And we hope, based on what we've seen in the past, to have a large amount of time available to the public.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the plan. I just want to make sure.
Sure.
Public use, it is a public facility.
Yep, it's big. It's big with us.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. No further discussion, questions? I guess we'll call the question.
Okay. Pete McGorry,
Yes.
David Miller,
Yes.
Mike Zuloff,
Yes.
Connor Whalen,
Yes.
Steve Pajali.
Yes.
It's been passed. Congratulations. Good luck going forward. Next item on the agenda is a site plan submitted by Mr. Victor Huston to build a barber shop at 1502 Hayes Avenue. And perhaps the staff could educate us on that application.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The site in question is zoned RRB residential business. The surrounding zoning to the north, east, south, and west is also RRB residential business. The surrounding uses of this property are both residential and business. The existing use of this lot is vacant, undeveloped parcel. The proposed use of this lot is a business. The site is approximately 0.08 acres. The site abuts Hayes Ave, which is a focus corridor in our comprehensive plan. This four-way corner historically has been a node for businesses and also residential use. The applicant is proposing to buy the lot from the city and place a barber shop on the site. The property was obtained by the city of Sandusky in 2015 and is currently vacant in the city's land bank program. The new building will be approximately 14 feet by 32 feet, which will include 2 off-street parking spaces. The proposal would add a taxable parcel back into the auditor's database. The parking standards are below the 25 required spaces to enable our landscaping requirement. However, staff has recommended low-level landscaping along the facades of Hayes and also Osborne Streets. All area standards are satisfied per our zoning code. All yard regulations are satisfied this is a permitted use. The zoning code does call for 2 off-street parking spaces. If you look at the site plan, the applicant has proposed somewhat of a parking lot concept. Staff would like to see, let me go back to the image on the right-hand side of the screen, 2 pull-in spaces instead of a parking lot concept, in an attempt to maybe make this site a little less complicated for the parking aspect. There are a couple comments from the engineering department, and that they do have concerns, not on the layout of staff's proposal, but more on how this will operate, the functionality of it. There is currently a lot of parking on this site. There's no parking sign. If you look at the north part of the site, there's a big section of curb cut that has apron on it. So cars are pulling right up onto that and parking. Staff has assumed it's for the residential surrounding uses, but being able to pull in and out of this site as a client to this potential barber shop, engineering is concerned and is willing to work with the applicant in the future to somehow fix that issue if it comes about. All other departments did not have any objections to this request. Staff recommends the approval of the proposed site plan at 1502 Hayes Ave with the following conditions, and that's that all applicable permits are obtained through the building department, engineering department, and planning, and any other applicable agency prior to construction. And secondly, that the parking space layout follows staff's recommendations.
Thank you. I have a question of staff. So are we looking at the actual, or is just a sample building, or is this going to be what the building is?
To the chair, this is an example we received from the applicant of his vision of the structure that would be on the site. I believe the applicant is here to speak further beyond what was given to staff or what staff knows on it, but that is what we were given and what we believe to be a representation of what would be on the site.
That doesn't look like it has a real foundation. Is that an acceptable construction in that area?
I can mention that we had a meeting with our chief building inspector and the applicant to talk about how he would need to get permitted to seat a building like this on that site properly and get his occupancy permit and everything. So we wanted to make sure that was all established before we brought this to you.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, I read through this, but it's been a couple days now, and then I was more focused on this transient rental ordinance. So what's the staff recommendation on this?
We recommend approval.
Approval, but it would be subject to everything you just said about
the building permits and everything. Yeah,
Correct, yes.
Our additional condition on this one was to recommend the parking be located where the red polygon is on the screen right now,
Okay.
so that 2 vehicles could pull in side by side and a vehicle doesn't have to come all the way into the back of the site. The way that the site plan is depicted as drawn, they were hoping to reutilize the existing concrete to pull a vehicle in the back, but we're concerned that that one will get kind of trapped back there and have to do like a 72-point turn to get back out. And it would be a lot more streamlined of a site plan for 2 vehicles to be next to each other in the red hatched area.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Zuloff.
I find myself struggling here. I don't think it's a prefab building. It's 14 feet wide. I find myself having to zoom in on my iPad to read the dimensions. I wish it was printed a little larger. So I'm seeing building 32 by 14. That includes the eaves. So it looks like the interior dimensions might be something on the order of 11 or 12 feet. Should be sufficient. What was this, the zoning is residential business, so we're not worried about change of use or anything, or the legality of the use or anything. So I think in principle, I like the way the plan is conceived in that we're not like setting it back and putting a parking lot up front. We're doing a walkable, up to the sidewalk. Customers are expected to walk up as much as drive up. right? So that follows a lot of the principles that we've been advocating. And as far as the aesthetics and so forth, I mean, you know, that's highly subjective and not what we're interested in, at least in this venue or in this question. And I do agree that bringing the two cars in side by side would leave you some extra space for either future development or a lawn or something. I think it would be important to condition this on fixing the apron so that you don't have excessive apron. You know, it's a little bit of concrete work to make this look right. That what we call the curb cut here, the curb cut resulting in an apron that's excessive. I don't know why, I don't remember the history there, but I think we should condition it on correcting the curb cut to match whatever is needed and nothing more. And also we should make sure that that it's actually paved, that we're not creating a temporary situation here. Other than that, I don't see the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Zulov.
Along those same lines, can you tell me, is it back off of the sidewalk because of zoning requirements? Because to me, it seems like if it came all the way up to the corner there, and I try not to do this too often, but it seems like if it went all the way to the corner, like the old beauty salon across the street does, right? Go all the way out to the corner, you'd have room, if you go back to that last slide, you'd have room to come in off of Hayes Ave and then out onto Osborne to park where that car is.
You're saying if you slid it kind of like northwest?
Allowances to build on the sidewalk instead of with setbacks.
We did
as it
give
is
him
right across the
guidance.
street.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
We did give him guidance to come off of Osborne because we want to limit the amount of curb cuts on Hayes since it's a travel corridor. So I think that from a traffic flow perspective, and I would expect Josh would
If it was
would
an
agree
in
too.
there, if it was an in on Hayes and an out on Osborne, it looks like that would be doable. It would require an extra curb cut.
It'd probably
And
add
it would
some
require
cost.
us allowing them to build on the sidewalk, like right at the sidewalk, as opposed to, what is it?
Through the chair, if I may.
5-foot setback?
To Mr. Whalen, are you proposing that you'd like to see the building itself all the way to the corner
All the way to the
to match the existing buildings across the street?
Right.
Okay.
And then being able to pull in off of Hayes to the south of the shop and out onto Osborne.
So that would require,
East of the shop.
that would require a variance. It is a residential business zoning district, but it's the top end of residential, so it does have pretty strenuous setback standards. In comparison to like a roadside business, the next level, or the lowest level, local business is the lowest level. That's another example. You can put a building pretty close to the property line, if not on it, in some of those business districts, where in this case, it's technically a high-end residential district that allows business uses. So the setback standards are met, that you meet the minimum setback in this drawing. And if you want the minimum, the side minimum in this district would be 10 feet. So,
So that's what that is.
correct, so it's met.
But that could be accomplished with a variance.
A variance could be another process to add to this. I would like to state the applicant,
Thoughts out there then.
the applicant has been extremely
Somebody wants to
patient
do
throughout
it.
this process. He originally approached the city, I believe, in August of 2022, give or take. I believe that's accurate. And he's been working with us, including the land bank, with Debbie Eversole in the community development department, to get to this step that we're at today. It wasn't a clear, obvious process, so I appreciate the applicant's patience. I'd hate to make him go through another variance process personally, but that's up to the board to decide if that's what they'd want to see.
I don't have a problem with this plan. I
Okay.
was just throwing that thought out there.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask about I'm a little confused here. This is, a slightly atypical sketch here. Where does the street right of way end on this? Is that the dotted line? Or is that, it says there's a 5 foot, I think it's 5 feet, even if I zoom in, it's setback, and then it looks like another 5 feet, that's the hashed line. What does the hard line around the periphery at Osborne and Hayes denote?
So I believe the dotted line is not the right-of-way. I believe it's the solid line to the left.
Solid line is the right-of-way?
Correct. I believe that's the property line, which then beyond that is the right-of-way.
Yeah, that would put the right-of-way, could that be the center line I'm looking at then, on the opposite side of where it says by the H at Hayes Avenue? I'm even wondering if there's a scale.
From the auditor's map, it appears that some of the public sidewalk is on the private parcel, so the dotted line may be the
You think that the dotted line is the sidewalk?
But that looks like less than 5
Right,
feet.
okay, well, and it helps to see well, can you go back to that last slide? So the white outline shows perhaps a 5 foot setback from the edge of the sidewalk.
10 feet, you said, right?
Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
probably a zero setback requirement in that district, right?
So if I may add, the picture we're looking at with the light gray proposed building footprint, that is a staff rendition of an arbitrary.
That's your interpretation of the application.
Correct, yeah. So that's not verbatim. That's not to scale by
I
any
mean,
means.
it's clearly a scale issue, unless that other line is the center line, that starts to make sense.
So with my experience in plan review, typically a dashed or dotted line such as this is put on there as a guideline for whoever drew the drawing as a setback standard. I don't want to assume that, but in my practice so far, that's the pattern. So my guess is the solid line to the left of the dashed line would be the property line and adjacent to the public right-of-way.
Well, I'm kind of inclined to go along with this because, I don't even like the zoning there, but, you know, we just argued against that zoning, but this is already zoned that. I think we have to remind ourselves, I've complained before about drawings not even coming close to the standards that are required in the law. Scale, readability, labeling, and so forth. Yet this is a small operation, and I can understand the need for economy. So I'm a little uncomfortable with what we're doing here, but having said all that, I still am kind of inclined to, at least for the point of discussion, for the reasons of discussion, make the motion that we approve this with the following conditions, any conditions in the report, that the apron be fixed so that the apron is only where needed, and that any parking areas be paved.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion that's been moved and seconded?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I remember this as a derelict property with a multi-story brick building that had a lot of police complaints and so forth. And I remember when it was demolished and subsequently cleaned up. It's good to see, from my perspective, a small business appropriately zoned, all that stuff. My confusion and concern is so trivial or something that in the application, it looks like they're requesting a 12 by 20 building, but in the text, it talks about a 14 by 32, and the rendering, just as I think about scaling the rendering from the width of a door, that looks more like the 12 by 20 foot building that I wondered where the creek was on this building that I'm trying to envision on this property. It doesn't seem like the pieces are consistent.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I sit on the Land Bank Committee, and I think the applicant had come for this piece of property, and we agreed to give it to the applicant because they were going to make it a productive piece of property. And right now, you have cars that are being parked there and people that are just kind of congregating. So in order to turn this into a productive piece of property, again, this was the only option we had, the only offer we had, so that's why we went ahead and approved it. I wonder, is the applicant here? Do you think you could just give us your vision and clear up maybe Mr. Miller's questions, and then we can take a vote?
Good evening, Chair.
Just state your
committee
name
members.
and your address, please.
Victor Houston, 1008 Seavers Way, Sandusky, Ohio.
Thank you.
Welcome. I guess the vision is this. I've been in the city for, since, well, I was born and raised here, so, you know, on the south side of town. I worked in restaurant management for 25 years, left the area, came back to the area, and I've operated a barbershop since 2011. Throughout, I've rented different places. I started out with Benny B's barbershop. I worked with him, still friends. I worked in a few different other locations, Stan Miller's Plaza out on Perkins Ave, and then recently on 1621. Most of the places that I've worked, I've been there for over 3-4 years in the concepts of working in these areas. The vision is the south side of town, when I grew up, we had several barbershops in that area. Gordon's, we had Betty Lou's, we had Swain's Barbershop, which a lot of these places, Brown's, which is one of the others, so there's 4 or 5 barbershops in that area, plus the Hardens was right there on Pierce and Hayes Avenue. A lot of these, Miss Coleman had actually taught at the high school. She was on Campbell Street also. These were all within a block or 2 of each other. But they sustained a lot of families and brought in a lot of memories and so forth in those areas. These are family-owned business where the children grew up in them, and I was a part of that. As a barbershop owner, I would like to bring that element back into the city. Things are changing, and I think we need to change with the time. That lot has been vacant for years, but I think it's a good lot for that purpose. You have elementary school right down the street. You have the middle school and high school several blocks down the street, and the kids are walking past there. All of them need haircuts. I've done things in the city to where Lions Park, I went out there and rented out Lions Park, or not rented it, but I gave out free haircuts for the full day, for Father's Day. These are some of the things that I've done in the community. Not noted, but it has been done. Good success. Cut over 60 heads that day. The barbershop in itself is a place to where a lot of the kids can come in, they can get some direction. They got a mentor there and other people. Not only is going to do that, it employs 2 to 3 other people. So it's not going to be a place that's going to, you know, I don't get into the things to where the after hours and the stuff that some barbershops are associated with. I don't do that. I run a clean business. It's an LLC. I've been operating that LLC since 2011. I pay my taxes on it. The building wise, I believe in the recommendations that everyone has made on the parking, because I think it simplifies things a little bit. But the curb appeal, I like the setbacks on it, so I don't want to go to that 0 variance on there to where I can't have any curb appeal. You're coming down Hayes Avenue, you got the hospital right there, another business, and it's a main thoroughway right to downtown. Why would you just want a building sitting on there? You know, just a plain faced building. I would like a little shrubbery, and I believe low level, that should help. So the vision is just to bring that neighborhood and that area back to some viability here in the city. That's my vision with that. Like Alex said, this actually was June when I applied, but I had been looking at the building or that lot for several months before that. Before I made a move on it, it was just in June. So we've been going through all of that. We met with all the boards, met with the water department, building code, so forth, to make sure that this thing was doable. We're just at this point now. So I'm ready to move forward if you guys are. It's just whether or not we're going to allow it to go those simple things that you spend is something that can, now, my architect can go back in and change those things. The problem with that right now, though, he's on his honeymoon, and he won't be back for another 10 so days. But I could have had that revamped and brought back in here on that, but he's out, and when he comes back in, I could do that. And whatever else you need on there, I could have that taken care of. So if you have any other questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, it sounds like you're amenable to make some adjustments.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to say that if you work with the staff, maybe the walkable cities thing, the direction we're moving, and I think you'll be happier and have a more valuable property in the long run if you considered, and unfortunately the site plan isn't, so Hayes doesn't meet Osborne Square.
Yes.
It's quite an obtuse angle. I think you'd be happier even if it wasn't even a square building, if you aligned the Osborne facade with the adjacent building, lined it up, and then it aligned the Hayes Avenue facade with the adjacent building, which I think will take you a little closer to the sidewalk. I think you're gonna have something that looks like it belongs there.
Okay.
It's just my thought. I'm not gonna tell you how to do it, it's not my job, but.
Absolutely.
But it's a thought, and it'll look like it'll belong there. And if you put it that way to your architect of aligning those facades with the adjacent buildings, I think you're gonna be happier in the long run. It's a little trickier, because it won't be a square building, but who cares, right? It'll look right. It won't, so.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
But in any event, and I don't know, maybe it'd be to your advantage to, if we table this and so you can finalize your plan, and then there'd be no question as to, if we prove this and then you start making changes, that could raise questions. If you still want to do a little work on it, we could table it for you if you want, and let you finalize your plans before we hold you to it. I'm just throwing that out. I don't know what your reaction to that is, if you're in a hurry here or not.
Can I make one?
But I think the sense is I can sense support for this body wanting you to build your barbershop, and we want to be a success, so just a thought.
Do we have a motion?
I kind of invited you to respond to the question of, we could table it.
I believe we have a motion that's been moved and seconded, is that correct?
You can.
Yeah.
What's your point? I mean.
That we have a motion that's been moved and seconded.
Right.
Let's call for the vote.
You can table the discussion any time and take it up at another time. The question is would the gentleman prefer some more time to work on this, or would you like an answer today?
I would like an answer today.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Just one quick
Yeah.
comment relative to Mr. Whalen's comment about coming in on Hayes. I think that's a good comment, although, and I'm not an engineer, I wouldn't pretend to be one, but I think you have much higher traffic counts on Hayes, and you'd have that stop and go, and you'd have rear end problems, so that's probably not doable.
Well, it sounds like he likes his setbacks, and it's his place, so.
I guess we're
That's
ready
fine.
to vote.
That wasn't a difference maker for me.
Unless somebody's adamant to make another comment, I'm going to call the question.
Mike Zuloff,
Yes.
Connor Whalen,
Yes.
Steve Pajali,
Yes.
David Miller,
Yes.
Pete McGorry.
Yes. It's been approved. Congratulations, good luck. I wish I had some hair to come get a haircut.
The beauty of it is, I built that business on straight razor shaves. I'm one of the only barbers in the city that gives a hot towel. So you're more than welcome to come.
I never had one of those.
Great experience.
All right.
That sounds wonderful.
Moving on.
Saving forever.
You're welcome. Moving on, it's an application, or a site plan has been submitted for 223 Meg Street. Mr. John Hancock, on behalf of McGookie Properties LLC, has submitted that site plan for 223 Meg Street for a building expansion at the Bait House Brewery. Perhaps staff could educate us on that first, and then Mr. Hancock's here, I see, as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The site in question tonight is zoned downtown business. The adjacent zoning to the north is two-family residential. To the east is public facilities. To the west is two-family residential, and to the south is two-family residential. The existing use of this site is both restaurant and a brewery. The proposed use is staying a restaurant and a brewery. The site sits on approximately 0.8167 acres, and with the addition proposes a coverage of 15.5%. The applicant is constructing a building to expand seating for the brewery and restaurant on the site and move the second floor kitchen to the ground floor. The addition will include an additional bar and seating area. Let me get to the site plan. There it is. The proposed building addition will be 1 story and with a height of 23 feet and 2 inches. The existing building area is 1,853 square feet. The proposed building addition is an additional 2,107 square feet, plus an enclosed patio, potential enclosed patio of 877 square feet for a total gross floor area per the application of 4,837 square feet. The proposal contains 29 parking spaces plus 3 ADA spaces, equaling 32 total. The code calls for approximately 48 spaces. The proposed parking area coverage is 15,132. The landscaping area is 2,100 square feet. The hours of operation have not been confirmed by the applicant, but staff has an assumption that it is going to stay as it currently is. The applicant is proposing to demolish an existing house on the site and a garage. Staff talked to the applicant about the feasibility of moving this historic structure, which is believed to be built in the 1920s or 30s, to a nearby parcel. In the land bank program, there was some talks about outside investors doing that. It seems to have fizzled out in the last few months. The house has not been moved as of yet, and no further discussions have taken place on moving it. In a December 6th of 2022 preliminary meeting, staff met with the applicant at the site to better understand ourselves of the proposed concept for the addition, pedestrian circulation, and also parking needs and site constraints. Staff has determined that the proposed building configuration is optimal for the flow and placement of the back of house needs, which includes kitchen and staff areas, and also the location of the walk-in cooler and the location of the proposed kitchen. The parking demand for the site upon strict application of the code is 48 spaces. However, the municipal building parking lot across the street has been utilized for the Bait House Brewery overflow parking for some time. There's an agreement in place, and that parking lot houses approximately 100 spaces. Further, the recently completed Meg Street project has also added additional on-street spaces. Given these ample parking opportunities that exist in close proximity for customers, staff recommends approval of the proposed parking counts, included the enhanced numbers recommended by the engineering staff, which I'll touch on in a little bit. To meet the landscaping requirements, a 100 square foot island is required as part of the parking lot improvements, as well as paving the existing gravel lot and any additional parking area that is currently grass or where that garage is currently existing. Due to close proximity of the Sandusky Bay pathway, which was newly installed, staff is suggesting to the applicant to add bike racks throughout the parking lot in close proximity to the entrance area that would accommodate up to 6 bicycles. And there's a diagram here I'll show in a bit that showcases where was a good area for those potential bike parking additions. So the next steps of this process, if it were to be approved tonight, is a few pieces additional to this request, and that is a side setback variance with the Board of Zoning Appeals and a minimum buildable lot variance. This is going to create 4 lots that are now not meeting our current area and yard requirements for an R2F residentially zoned parcel. So that is one variance. The other variance is a 15-foot minimum side yard setback for a business use that is adjacent to a residentially zoned parcel. The proposal is both, let's see here, 7.2 feet for one section, 5.7 feet, and 6.1 feet. So getting the variance for that is another piece of the puzzle. Also a lot split in combination, which staff has received from the applicant. The engineering did give some parking feedback and recommendations that's now on the screen. Essentially, the flow of the parking lot was adjusted per engineering's attempt at maximizing parking coverage of the site. It adds 2 spaces to the site, and engineering sees this as a better flow of traffic. Aside from this recommendation, engineering did not have any further objections to the request. If you see the dashed areas in yellow, that's considered to be non-parkable space, and it's a good opportunity for landscaping and/or the bike parking areas. Staff recommends approval of the proposed site plan for 223 Meg Street with the following conditions before construction, and that's that all applicable permits are obtained through the building, engineering, and Department of Planning or any other applicable agency. Item 2 is that a variance application is submitted and approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals for the following, and that is an encroachment to the 15 feet side yard minimum setback requirements for a proposed business addition adjacent to a residential district, and also creating 4 parcels that do not meet the minimum area and yard requirements. The third item is a lot split to accommodate the building footprint of the new addition. The fourth item is a lot combination to consolidate the new lots into the Bait House's parcel. And a fifth is the gravel portion of the existing parking lot, and any new parking space becomes a paved surface, and also 100-foot of landscape area is added, bike racks are added, and that the layout of the parking lot follows engineering staff recommendations.
Thank you. Does anybody on the commission have questions of staff?
One comment, they did push back on engineering's recommendation for the parking layout, so you might want to discuss that with the applicant to understand what they're advocating for. They continue to advocate that this is the better layout for their needs.
So you're asking that the applicant explain their current position?
I was just posing that to the chair and the board.
No,
for
I
your-
don't. I'm just trying to understand your point. You'd like them to explain their current position as to those suggestions or recommendations?
Yeah, that would give you all the information for
Yes.
evaluation of
Okay.
of that case.
Mr. Hancock or Mr. McGookie, or both of you?
We're going to double team you.
Okay. And I happen to know both of you, but just for the record, maybe you could both state your name and addresses.
Dan McGookie and then John Hancock, 1205 Cedar Point Road, Sandusky.
John Hancock, my office is at 326 East Market Street. I still have an office there.
All right.
I just want to thank the commission again, as part of the total city government, which we've been, since the Bait House has been in operation for almost 5 years, that I can't overstate the cooperation and the professionalism that we've met with. We just started with this little, I hate to call it hole-in-the-wall operation. It's still kind of a hole-in-the-wall operation, but it's a bigger hole-in-the-wall operation now. And we want to get bigger, and we want to continue to be a good corporate citizen of Sandusky, and I just am so excited as a lifelong resident, soon to be 70 years old in 2 weeks. What is going on in Sandusky right now is just incredible. And 10 years ago, when I was 60 years old, I never thought this would happen. So with that said, Aaron, and particularly the staff, we've received tremendous assistance, and the staff did come out and meet with us, and the interest and the questions very perceptive. So I just can't overstate the welcome that we've had, and it continues with the city of Sandusky. So thank you all. With that said, I don't know if I'd call it pushback. That's why I wanted John to come up here as the engineer. As far as the parking, I guess John can pick it up here. The plan that John drew up called for at the back, or the west side of the parking lot where there's now gravel, to be straight-in parking. The engineering department came back and said, I guess creates 2 more spots, but for whatever reason, to make that angled parking. With that said, I'll just let John give his, and he's had further discussions with Josh Schneider at engineering. So I think they've worked that up, and I'll let John speak to that.
Thank you.
So, excuse me, John.
Thanks. As to the parking scheme, we appreciate the suggestions that engineering made and that planning staff had asked to be looked at in terms of providing angled spots on this layout. And it did gain 2 more parking spots, but an angled layout to do that did several things that we wanted to avoid. One was that it lost a regularly configured center median, which provides our landscaping island requirements. And we also need to use that island for stormwater control, stormwater quality. It's just head-in spaces gives us a better configuration for that island. The other thing is that the angled spots, as presented by engineering staff, blocked off the back of the old bait shop building, and we need unrestricted access there because that building is still used somewhat for storage and for washout facility for the brew house. And the angled spots also presented the possibility that people would park in an area that we need open access to in the back of the current brew house. You can see at the very bottom of the frame there that those angled spots would potentially contain cars that would block off access both on an emergency basis and for regular access to the back of the brew house. So I'd like, with your permission, I think in presenting the final plan to engineering, we could try to incorporate some of these suggestions, but we had some good reasons for presenting this layout as we have it now.
Sure.
It also, just as a note, we're basically keeping the existing parking that's there and essentially just expanding the head-in parking as it's used in the back.
So the city, of course, has standards for fairways, parking widths, and all that stuff. Does your perpendicular parking plan meet that? Maybe the staff? I've been seeing a nod from our chief planner that it does. So I think I don't remember a lot of precedents where the city redesigned it for the applicant. But so your contention is that this one's just fine, the one we see on the screen right now.
Oh,
And preferred.
Yeah, that's ours.
Yeah.
It's up there.
Yeah. I think we thought through it and got all of Mr.
And this was your initial submission?
Yes.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I subsequently
Do you, sir, have experience in these matters?
4 years.
Sorry.
4 years and I care to count. So. But it's good to have the interplay and different ideas on these things.
Sure.
We don't always catch everything and consider everything we should consider sometimes too. So
Mr. Chairman.
how's that for being contrite?
Mr. Jolly.
I always like to support staff when I can. I guess I've got a question for Ms. Blair. This was Josh's recommendation, right? He didn't say that their concept wouldn't work.
That's correct. We were on observation because the way the traffic comes in, you come in and then you have to move your vehicle around. And the way that Josh was proposing, you could actually see if there's parking spaces if you look down it as a driver. But I think the applicant explained their reasoning fully of why they had landed at the layout that they landed on.
Yeah, I guess my feeling is if the applicant comes in with some sort of parking plan that does work, that the engineers don't object to, they just maybe see a different way to configure it. I don't have a problem with that. And I think that, like you said, John, if you and Josh can sit down and maybe put some final touches on it that both of you can compromise on, or however you want to approach it, I can live with that.
And we're glad to.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Zuloff.
Sorry. I'm trying to figure out if there's room for a swale or a rain garden or whatever it is that you're putting in there. perpendicular, why wouldn't there be room for the same thing diagonal? I don't understand.
It's more the configuration of it becomes
Yeah.
kind of odd with angled spots.
And again, once again, we're faced with, I'm pretty sure you didn't work at this scale, but we're given a rather tiny, I don't know what good it does to ask for a dimensioned sheet. I don't know, if I was trying to turn those tight corners, I'd rather have 10-foot spots, not 9-foot spots, but given the size of your average crew cab, flare side pickup truck these days, but again, you got to live with it.
They can park across the street, so.
Yeah, park in the police department. Right, on the street, better yet, right? Besides, half of them will have boat trailers, so. In any event, if it was mine, since if the engineering department can give an opinion, I can't. If it was mine, I'd give up a couple spots and go 10 feet, but other than that, it's your lot, and I'm kind of inclined to, let the applicant figure out what they need. I don't see it. Normally, I'm concerned with conflicts with other enterprises. Okay, so if you have a big business and you have insufficient parking, you're creating conflicts, you're creating problems for the neighbors. I'm not sure that's what we're looking at yet. I'm inclined to give the applicant what they're asking for.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve this application with the comments that staff has made, with the exception that their parking plan can move forward the way they configured it.
Second.
Thank you. That's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr.
he
Miller.
had me at water quality and stormwater management.
Okay. Any further comments? Discussion? All right, we'll call the question.
Pete McGorry,
Yes, according to the motion made by Mr. Bajali.
David Miller,
Yes.
Steve Pajali,
Yes.
Connor Whalen,
Yes.
Mike Zoloff.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to say that I appreciate, Mr. McGookie, everything you're doing on Make Street there. I mean, that took a lot of courage. I always thought it would be a good idea, but I thought the bar would go in the original bait shop and they'd leave the minnow with the water going and stuff, but I guess it wasn't big enough. But yeah, that's a nice addition to Make Street.
Very much. I hear the same thing from my wife every night about thanking me for my courage. So I'm kidding. But I just landed. I mean, and again, I want to repeat that it's to no small extent, we're there and we've done so well because of all the help that we've gotten from the city and from the Planning Commission. So, we just want to keep going.
Can we look forward to an Airbnb in the bait shop?
What's that?
Can we look forward to an Airbnb in the bait shop?
In the bait shop?
Yeah,
Not in the bait
yeah.
shop, but somewhere
On Washington.
So.
I was just wondering if the judge wanted to add a few words.
I want to thank you too, and I can see you're very diligent at the questions that you ask. They're very good questions, and you put a lot of thought into it, and it takes a long time to get through your meetings, and so I thank you for that. Also, I'd like to add that I actually, as the probate judge, I had a lot of involvement with the planning of the Sandusky pool, because a lot of that money came from the Y Foundation that was now defunct, and it was a pool fundraiser for the Y, and so we worked through I worked with the Community Foundation and the other people from, that were on the Y Foundation and all that, because my concern for that pool was to be accessible to the public too. And so I was finally satisfied after putting through quite a few hoops and hurdles. And so I signed off on that plan. And so I think, you know, what you did tonight for the pool advancement is really good too. So.
Thank you, Your Honor.
See you guys.
Okay. Good luck, guys.
I
Thanks.
was the one that had the courage to marry him.
That I can't.
There's the comment.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. I think we got one more item on the agenda. Under new business, Superior Street right-of-way, and I think
Just a
Mr.
memo.
Holliday has something to say.
Yes, evening commissioners. My name is Jonathan Holliday. I'm the Director of Community Development for the City of Sandusky. As some of you may know, we were asked last year by the County Health Department to help them improve their entranceway to their facility on Superior Street there. The main objectives were to improve the signage to the facility and create a pedestrian walkway leading to their facility. We determined that the best way to accomplish that was to purchase the two-family home on the corner of Superior and Monroe, 3201 West Monroe Street. So the city did that last year. We partnered with the County Land Bank to have that house demolished. That work is just recently completed. We then entered into a long-term lease with the health department, whereby they'll have the ability to install their sign, pay us back for the acquisition costs over the period of 5 years, at which time the property will transfer to the health department. That lease did allow us to expand the right-of-way at this location. In working with the Public Works and Engineering departments, we determined that expansion of the Superior Street right-of-way would be preferable at this location. That'll allow for continuous right-of-way on the western side of Superior Street. You may be able to see that the current right-of-way has a jog in it as it approaches Monroe at this location. So this will create a continuous right-of-way along the western side of Superior Street, which allows us to have a sidewalk that's fully aligned all the way up to the health department campus. It also creates a continuous and consistent tree lawn. And lastly, it provides us with the ability, should the city ever determine that it would be appropriate to expand the roadway of Superior Street to add another lane if traffic volumes ever warranted that. So I'm here this evening to answer any questions you may have on this proposal, ask for your approval and recommendation so we can proceed with the right-of-way expansion. I believe there's a plat map here in the presentation as well to show the further detail, and thanks for your consideration.
I'll add one comment. This showed up in your packet as a memorandum from the Public Works Department. That's how the right-of-way dedications have been handled in the past. So that's where that was.
The health department's already got something lined up to buy that corner parcel there.
Correct. We've entered into a lease with the health department so that they can install their
The
signage.
city owns that corner when I missed that.
Correct, yes. We purchased that corner last year, and we've since torn the house down, and eventually the remainder of the property, anything that we don't dedicate as right-of-way, will ultimately transfer to the health department at the end of about 5 years.
So we're looking for a motion to approve this plat.
Yes, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any further questions or discussion? Maybe call the question on that motion.
Mike Zuloff,
Yes.
Connor Whalen,
Yes.
Pete McGorry,
Yes.
Steve Pajali,
Yes.
David Miller.
Yes.
I guess congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay.
Adjourn?
I guess that covers everything on the agenda. Anybody care to make a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we do have some member of the audience that would like to speak.
Oh, okay. Sure, you may. Not on the agenda, but go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sue Doherty, and I'm here representing Serving Our Seniors. I was here in January when the recommendation was made by Ohio leadership that the commission consider modifying ordinances that would allow for ADUs or additional dwelling units. I just wanted to continue to let you know that I am still in favor of that, and I hope that the recommendation is being given consideration. I just had a conversation at work. At Serving Our Seniors, we have somebody that is providing a service called Money Mentoring. And it's basically helping retirees look at what they can do to make ends meet with inflation and with the high cost of rent. It's becoming more difficult for more clients of ours, and really we serve the full spectrum. We just don't help low-income older adults. And we had 2 cases today that we discussed at morning meeting of retirees who have the help of our coworker Donna Green, who is serving as a money mentor. And in both cases, they're really desperate situations. One person is going to have to leave her condominium, and the other person already lost her apartment and is living with a relative and has to leave because the apartment lease will not allow for 2 individuals to live in that apartment. And there is no place for them to go. We are in touch with the senior housing projects and the other apartments, and there just is nowhere to go. And we really do need to find a way to increase the supply of housing. And because when there's more housing, I believe that it's fair to estimate that rental rates will go down. So I'm a strong proponent for finding a way to do something that will offer those who are retired an affordable place to live, especially if they are not low income. Those individuals need help too, but the people who are just over the brink of low income, they really don't have an alternative. So please continue to consider that recommendation, and I thank you for hearing my plea.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if I could offer a comment to Ms. Jordan. As you go about advocating for this, and I happen to think this is a good idea and we should move forward, we should create standards for this with emphasis on standards. How low can you go to solve this problem? There's a danger of solving the wrong problem, lowering the standards to provide more housing. I know people with 3 and 4 houses that occupy them at will, and they're empty most of the year. We've created a society where some people can afford multiple houses all over the planet, and some people can't afford the rent for a studio or anything decent, right? So keeping in mind that we're kind of solving the wrong problem, let's make sure we don't make the basement too low or too deep, or there are places in the world where they solve the problem with building shacks with no regulation, literally living in tin and cardboard shacks.
Right.
We got to make sure we don't get that low. But we need standards. We need to probably lower the bar just a little bit, but only so far, and advocate for just making sure that people can afford decent housing and not have to, reduce the definition of decent housing to what they can afford. Thank you.
Great.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr.
Might I ask staff what the current status is of developing? I remember that presentation. Seems like it's longer ago than January, but where are we in the consideration process or developing? I think Eric, when he was here, was a proponent of doing that. What's the stance?
So the Planning Commission made a motion to direct staff to conduct an analysis of our zoning code, which is in process. We just want to be sure that we understand where the barriers exist and come to you with recommendations for how to expand the ability for accessory dwelling units in the zoning code.
Is there any kind of timeline? We're not waiting for a new city manager, are we?
No, we just need to do the research, and as you saw, we had 7 cases this month, and things continue to be bustling in the community development department.
I understand.
I'm going to make a comment. I think this occasionally when I see houses being earmarked for demolition, and if I were to think about the cost of an accessory dwelling unit, whether it's changing a garage or a carriage house or something, and there's not many houses in this town that have those facilities already. I mean, a few of the bigger old mansion type houses, but we do have a number of really derelict properties that when I see them, I just wonder, before they're torn down, are the bones strong enough to be redone? And would somebody, if somebody, now, somebody may want to do that for transient rental because they can make big bucks through the summer, but it isn't financially viable to take one of those derelict houses and redo it and rent it out for a long-term rental. Can you still recoup your investment? And should we, I wonder, would it be possible to really rethink tearing down these houses and try to work to rebuild them? So I don't know. Now that once they're torn down, there's a lot, and I'm on the Habitat for Humanity board, and some of those lots get low-income houses built that way.
Well, Habitat has rehabbed some houses. Part of the problem
I
is.
don't think they rehab them. I think they take a
They
lot
have done
to
some.
build, yeah.
I don't know how many they've done, but it has been done here. So mostly they build them, and it's more complicated, obviously. But, so, part of the problem is the law. I mean, you can, when you condemn a house, it means like condemn to demolition, right? So there's limited things that you can do. You have to have the political will to enforce housing codes and building codes so that the buildings don't decay to the point where they are beyond hope, right? That's been our nemesis for decades. Every new crop of city commissioners says, yeah, we're gonna, fix these decrepit houses and force the owners to fix them. And then the phone calls start, and why are you picking on me, and why are you picking on my, or I can't afford to do it, I'm on a fixed income or everything. And over and over again, we go through this cycle of we're gonna do something about this, and then it doesn't get done. The other problem is when we have limited tools, and maybe Mr. Heil can address that a little bit, but you can't just take the house and then rebuild it. You can condemn it and to demolition once it's a nuisance, but it's not that easy, to just take somebody's property.
We actually have had some internal staff conversations about not just using demolition as a mechanism, using the receivership process to potentially, when a house has become a nuisance property, finding a way to get it into hands that would lead to remodeling versus just tearing it down and having the vacant lot. But that'll take time to work out that process, and it is not as easy for a municipality to do as it would be for a community development corporation or others to do. But myself and some of the community development staff have started looking into this because.
Well, we do have community development.
We do not have a community development corporation in Sandusky.
Okay, well, maybe we need it.
just for my 2 cents, I think what had happened was in the Great Recession of 2008, all the money that became available, that the flavor of the year or the month or a few years was demolition. There was a school of thought that we don't need all this housing anymore. It's time to start tearing it down. So all this federal money started to pour into demolition, and that's where the money goes, and that's where government goes, where they can access the funds to do that. The other thing about rehab is really a tough nut. And I'm not trying to say it shouldn't be done, but the issue becomes, can you find contractors that'll follow through and do it, or will they run off with your money? A few years back, the city ran into problems with their CHIP program because they had issues with these contractors taking the money and not finishing up. So, yeah, Mr. Zuloff, I appreciate what you're saying, but it's very, very difficult. And I guess if it was easy, we'd be doing it, right? So we have to keep searching.
That was what I was trying to get at. So there's some lots that are 25 feet wide with houses that weren't ever any much to look at, and allowing somebody splitting those lots and allowing room for two driveways or shared driveway might be a good idea, or a garage. But there have been some sad cases of some houses that had some good bones and got torn down because we didn't have another legal alternative, or no one was particularly interested in that moment in the economy to rehab it, but definitely had the potential to be rehabbed. So it's sort of a case by case, but I think we have to consider our options in each case, not lose our beautiful historic homes. The blue house at is it Franklin in Washington, the new Airbnb, what street is that?
Washington and Franklin.
Well, I know it's Washington and Franklin, okay. That house was a beautiful gingerbread, all painted white, sadly. It was getting neglected on the exterior. It had some problems in the interior. That could have gone south really quick. And, well, fortunately, that got addressed while it still had economic viability. And look at it now, it's a beautiful success story. We can't keep losing neat old houses unnecessarily. I mean, we can't, it's just not a good idea. So.
Sounds to me like opportunity is knocking, maybe Zuloff and Company. You could form a construction company and go out and make your fortune. So with that, Mr. Chairman, a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
So
all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks.